Hi, Paul. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you.
You're one of the speakers at the Fresh conference here in Turnhout. Also the reason why you're here in the studio. You are a freelance festival director working on some of the world's most successful festivals. Maybe we should start talking about those festivals. In your opinion, what makes a festival a great festival and really stands out?
Well, I think one of the things about any good festival is I often say that they're some of the world's great meeting places. It's where people who share a passion, an interest, a love of music, film, books, whatever. It's where they meet and indulge in that passion. I think, but to me, what makes a great festival though is where, if you like, the event, music, film, or whatever, but also the place. Combine. A phrase that I use too much is, well, it could only happen here. So that there's a.
Is that so? Can't a festival be moved to another place?
I think personally, the best festivals are the ones that have a great sense of place. That in a way you could not imagine that event working in another town. Because it really embeds itself in the place.
Okay.
They're the ones that I really enjoy, because that's what makes them unique. Because say a jazz festival, you could see that maybe the same jazz artists in 9 or 10 different towns, but actually, if for example, you go to the Molde Jazz Festival in Norway, it feels perfect because it's in Molde. Something about the place and the jazz and the people, make that event really work. So as I say, to me, it's that combination, and I suppose that's part of where why I'm at this conference around meetings, because I think some of these things translate, hopefully, across our industries.
You already mentioned the people, and the thing with successful festivals is most of the time also a very loyal audience coming back every year.
They are, and it's incredible, especially certain types of events, especially music events. You get things like jazz, like blues, country music, and classical music, where it's not uncommon to meet people who've been to the past 20, 30 editions. Once they've found an event they love, they keep going back. Now, that's not unusual in festivals, but of course for tourists that's highly unusual. Most of us tend to go a different place each year. So you have this incredible loyalty, and then these people they become amazing ambassadors, not just for the festival, but actually for the place as well. So again, I think that's one thing that I always notice about really good festivals, is that you have this core at the heart of the audience, people who are kind of super passionate about not just the jazz or books, but actually about that particular festival.
You mentioned niches like a jazz festival and a specific festival for a specific audience. There are also in the world a lot of very generalistic festivals. In your opinion, can that work, a generalistic approach?
I think it's getting harder because it's such a crowded marketplace. I think maybe if you do something like a food festival, of which there are many, if you can't find a way to make yours a little bit different, I think it's going to be a struggle. I think what we're seeing in such a crowded marketplace is real niche events. So rather than maybe a film festival, you start maybe an Asian film festival. Or I've come across 2 surf film festivals dedicated to surfing movies. That niche.
Are there surfing?
Well, I can't name one, but there are these events.
There is a crowd for it.
I think there is, because as I say, there's 2 or 3 of these festivals. But I think that's definitely one of the shifts that I'm seeing, is that in some ways, sometimes as a new event, you have to be doing something different. You have to be a little bit more original. So, and occasionally that means that you have a rather more narrow focus. Now, that doesn't mean that's where you stay. Maybe you will develop into maybe a more general festival. But actually owning one piece of ground sometimes seems to be important. And that's definitely a trend in the past 10, 15 years, I think. But
that's then also about finding your identity as a festival.
It's absolutely about finding your identity. It's about being able to have something different to say from other events, and to create that little square of the marketplace for yourselves. So I think that as festivals are exploding worldwide, I think we're going to see more and more of these kind of remarkable niche events.
It sounds logic, but at the same time, if you're organizing an event, and especially if you do that for the first time, you want to reach as many people as possible because you want to sell those tickets.
Yeah.
But it sounds contradictory in some way by limiting yourself to only the people who like surfing movies, for example.
It is, and I suppose I'm not saying, and it's not as if there are not, hundreds of new food festivals and film festivals every year, covering the more general ground, and some of them are successful. But as I say, it is more difficult, I think, to create that unique identity for your organisation. If you're just, a friend of mine wants to start something that he's going to call yet another jazz festival, just as the name of his event, because for that reason that he thinks there are so many new festivals that he just. I think the real skill is people you meet who can take perhaps just a very unique idea, but actually make it accessible to a large audience. I think they're the real, they're like your Michelin chefs, I think, of the festival world. People who can create something that is unique, but actually make many people interested and passionate about it.
Yeah, we've been talking now about what it takes to be successful at an event, but what makes festival fail?
Sometimes it can be as simple as that you just cannot find the money to support what you need to do. Sometimes it's that simple. I think one interesting thing is I've seen events fail sometimes through over ambition. One of the challenges with the festival is you're normally only running for maybe 1 or 2 weeks a year, and it often takes a lot of time to build up the infrastructure and organisation to be able to do that and to grow. And so occasionally if an event tries to grow too rapidly in a way, its infrastructure and organisation is not caught up. I think the other reason a lot of events fail is they lose their sort of focus on and feel for their core audience. A very typical one, for example, is maybe an event that is really desperately trying to draw tourists into a city, but its primary focus tends to be the tourists, whereas its core audience is almost certainly its local audience. So they're looking over there for the tourists, and they're ignoring the fact that their hardcore audience is the local audience. So again, sometimes that is the challenge. The other reason for failure, sometimes, which you shouldn't blame people, events do need to, at various points, reinvent themselves. They do need to develop and change, and that means taking a risk. If you want to change an event, hopefully those risks work, but occasionally
it fails.
They don't. It fails. Yeah. But you still have to. As I say, it's still personally, it's better to take the risk and fail than not to take the risk at all. Because otherwise, if you're not changing your event over a long period, you're just waiting for failure to happen over a longer period, I think.
Yeah. What does a festival director like you do at the Fresh Conference? A conference for meeting planners, not festivals?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's fascinating because, as I say, a lot of the principles that I see working in festivals around the world, big cities, small towns, big events, small events. What's fascinating for me now is to see how these principles cross into different industries. So when I had the invitation for this event, it was very natural. As I say, I talk about festivals being some of the world's great meeting places. A word which, I'm using my presentation at this, it also is one of the joys of creating festivals is the way you can transform places. You can transform a town for a day, for a week, and also you can transform lives. The number of people I've met who've performed at, been to a festival, and it's changed their life in some way. That's what a privilege. And I can't help but feel that there are elements of this in the meetings industry as well. I think, most of us have perhaps attended a meeting, an event, a conference, which has turned on a light bulb. So I think it's some of these things which I'm interested in exploring. What are the principles from my world that would work in the meetings industry as well? And I have the joy of being able to present with a panel of experts. So I will talk about some of the aspects that I see working in festivals, and then hopefully they're going to help translate that into the language of meetings and meeting design.
In meeting design, we talk about festivalization,
Yeah.
making a conference more like a festival. That's a good idea in your opinion?
I think so. Yeah, because again, some of the things festivals enjoy: great audience loyalty. People are prepared to talk about events. They become the highlights of their annual calendar. A lot of these things are, I think, the same within events and meetings. So, I think festivalization is a good way of talking about it. And also, the meetings industry. Is a much more mature industry than it was 10, 15 years ago.
It is.
And I think there's more professionalism, there are more university courses, more training, these kind of things. And I think, this notion of, how do we evolve events, how do we evolve meetings, how do we get away from some of the formats that have kept us going for the past few years. I think festivalization is quite a good way of thinking of that evolution. I hope.
It is, and maybe next year we will have kind of pop stars as speakers.
Yep.
Okay, Paul, thank you very much for coming over to our studio and share your expertise with us.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And you at home, thank you for watching our show. I hope to see you next week.